She's got the 12-inch butcher knife. And she has it right by her side. And she's walking. And she's walking.
And it is true that whatever's going on in her mind, whatever's going on with her mental illness, the evidence will show that she got behind Wood and her child.
And she stabbed him in the side of his face. And then she stabbed me.
Was defendant Bionca Ellis really insane at the time of the stabbing? The prosecution is depicting her as a frustrated person with an axe to grind. So do the events that lead up to the stabbing support the state's theory? Plus, we're analyzing the affidavit as brand new details are being revealed in the attack and stabbing of former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez. We'll talk about who has liability. And we're being a voice for victims this morning as we look ahead to the trial of the father who's accused in the hot car death of his beautiful little girl, Parker. Also coming up for you, a disturbing new case out of Texas as a mother allegedly shot 4 of her children, killing 2 of them. And this morning, we're asking why. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Thursday morning to you, my friends, or should I say happy Friday Eve. We're almost there. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It's that time in the morning where we get you warmed up and ready for the big day ahead. Grab your cup of coffee or tea or hot water with lemon, whatever you're having this morning. It's time for my opening statement. Every action has consequences. The alleged actions of 29-year-old Jonathan Rinderknecht had deadly consequences. This guy's facing federal charges accused of maliciously lighting the fire on New Year's Day in Pacific Palisades that took the lives of 12 people and destroyed more than 6,000 homes and buildings. When I heard about these allegations, about that fire being allegedly intentionally set, my stomach dropped, my heart sank, and my blood boiled. You know, with one single act of allegedly taking a lighter to vegetation or paper, the consequences that followed were as devastating as they could possibly be. What Jonathan Rinderknecht allegedly did is so egregious, so disgusting, so dastardly, and so unspeakable. There is no punishment severe enough to give him. My heart breaks for those victims. It was bad enough they had to suffer the trauma of losing their loved ones, losing their homes, or both. But now to learn that the cause is allegedly criminal? It takes that trauma and that heartache to a whole nother level. May God bless them as they gear up for the fight now in criminal court for justice. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
You're going to hear from Fond du Lac County Medical Examiner Adam Kovac that Tatiana Zek, 18 years old, was in, and you'll see a video of this as well, in the parking lot of the Maplewood Commons between 2 of the buildings with a group, and a bullet struck her in the head, and she died from a single gunshot wound.
In Wisconsin, we've got the state's case continuing for Paris Larry. He's the teen accused of killing a young woman who got caught in the crossfire while taking out the trash. Court's going to start up at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Also at 9:30 a.m., the sentencing for Harvey Weinstein is expected in New York. No cameras are allowed in the courtroom, but we will monitor things, bring you updates throughout the day. And in Ohio, we've got the state's case expected to rest today in the Toddler stabbed murder trial for defendant Bionca Ellis. And that is, of course, our top story this morning. So will the jury believe Bionca Ellis's defense? So here's what we have here. This woman's pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. We know that 3-year-old Julian Wood was stabbed to death at a Giant Eagle grocery store parking lot in the greater Cleveland area. Now, Ellis's defense team isn't denying that she stabbed Julian and Julian's mother, Margot Wood. But instead, what they're saying is that she was insane at the time of the event. In other words, didn't legally know right from wrong. We know she was diagnosed with schizophrenia, according to the defense, and they also say she was off her medication at the time of the incident.
She acknowledges through her lawyers, whether she testifies or not, that she's responsible for the murder of Julian. She acknowledges through her lawyers that she's responsible for the attempted murder of Margot. There's no running away from that. That's not what this trial is about. The evidence will show, though, that it is obvious that she was insane at the time of the offense.
So we've seen Ellis at a previous hearing, smiling at the camera, making different faces. A lot of the comments on social media say things like, wow, she really looks crazy. But is she? Is she? And at trial, we're seeing kind of a different version of Bionca Ellis, a very subdued version. I said to my team yesterday, I wondered if she's medicated. We don't know. Maybe we'll find out. So let's talk about what the jury may be thinking and how viable this defense is. Let's bring in our guests. So pleased to have with me this morning forensic psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman and high-profile criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael J. Brown. Good morning to you both. Dr. Carol, let me begin with you as we look at some of the important events that occurred that led up to the stabbing. And I want to ask you if any of these events may inform a professional opinion of one of the expert witnesses we may be seeing soon in the trial. So we know this woman got arrested for theft the week before the incident in question, and she attempted to reclaim her property on the day of the stabbing. That's why we see her at the police station. And the police officer who had the interaction with her said she seemed very irritated when she left the lobby. She even turned off the light switch in the station lobby. And then we see she left behind her wheelchair and her suitcase. Again, apparently maybe angry. She was caught on camera stealing the knives at the thrift store, and then she goes into the grocery store where the incident occurred. And we know that there was compliance with the officers. She walked away very nonchalantly. Dr. Carol, you had an interesting take yesterday, and for any viewers who missed the segment, we want to hear more. So we wanted to bring you back this morning and tell us what you're thinking and what these timeline events tell you professionally.
Well, first of all, she was, according to her attorneys, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia when she was 22, and she's 33 now, and she supposedly had 10 years of treatment with medication and so on. And yes, I do think she is medicated now in the courtroom because there was this whole issue of whether she was competent to stand trial, and the way that they got her competent was by giving her medication. So, but I mean, there still are these moments of where she does have kind of a strange look, where she, you wonder what she's thinking. So she left the store, the police station, and she was angry, and she got knives. Now, whether she was thinking that she had to protect herself, whether she was feeling paranoid, or whether she was just feeling angry and she wanted to do something to somebody. But what I find is so interesting is I haven't seen the look. The guy cross each other right before she attacks the little boy and the mother. They cross each other in the store. And I wonder if we haven't seen the face of the mother. And I wonder if she, had this sort of visual hallucinations, or she misinterpreted with the look on the mother. The mother veered, to not hit her. But perhaps she projected something onto the mother that the mother was thinking badly of her or something, and that is why she picked that person to attack. But, just the fact that she had a diagnosis of schizophrenia, that isn't enough to get to reach the criteria of not guilty by reason of insanity. It has to be by mental disease or defect that at the time of the crime, they couldn't appreciate the wrongness of their acts.
Dr. Carroll, really helpful insight. Thank you. I have a clip from Margot Wood, little Julian's mother. She was stabbed and fortunately survived this attack. Let's listen to some of what she told the jury.
I moved, and she stabbed him in the side of his face. And then she stabbed me.
Take a minute and ask a question.
Oh, that was a big moment on the stand with Margot Wood when she testified yesterday. Michael J. Brown, let me go to you legally. This defense, how viable do you think it is?
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, Doc. It is a real defense, and the law provides for it. And actually, society has caught up to some extent with the understanding and the acceptance, I think, of this type of defense. But remember, this is a defense that has to be asserted by the defendant, and it's an affirmative defense. So what that means, Julie, is the defense is going to have the burden of proving that defense by what we call a preponderance of the evidence. So they have to tip the scales just a little more than the other side to establish the proof. And yeah, they can establish it. What you're going to focus on is they're going to have hired an expert, I believe, and the expert will have examined the defendant and had an extensive examination of the prior medical history, prior diagnosis, discuss the incident with the defendant, gather records from the past, and the defense is going to want to focus on immediately prior, during, and immediately after the incident to try to establish that she, in fact, was insane. And the doctor hit it right on the head, which is she was unable to appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions at that moment in time.
Appreciate the explainer, Michael. This is really important. You both are providing great insight as we need to understand the legal components here and the medical components. Speaking of, Dr. Carroll, back to you. What do you think about the victims here that were chosen, for lack of a better way of saying it, by this woman? Whether she was experiencing a hallucination or not, I don't know. Only she really knows. But what do you think about the fact that this is a 3-year-old child and a mother pushing a shopping cart? I mean, defenseless, helpless people, no doubt. It wasn't like she picked a big, strong, strapping young man, to attack who could have possibly knocked the knife out of her hand and knocked her down. She picked vulnerable people. What does that say to you?
Yes, I think that was definitely a part of it. Sometimes people are jealous. Here's a mother and a son with a shopping cart. Such a cute, such a warm scene. And sometimes if someone is very jealous of that, like perhaps she didn't have that kind of experience with her mother, maybe she was missing her mother, or wasn't getting her mother's attention. They had been estranged for 6 months before this incident. So it seems like perhaps she was envious of that relationship.
I love what you're saying there. Let's play this out even more. Let's keep going down this road, because this is a really good theory. She's agitated, we know, according to the police officer, when she leaves. She goes and she gets knives, and then, like you said, she sees this adorable sight with this little toddler who's cute as can be, his mom. They've got flowers in the cart, of all things. That you're right, it's something out of like Happy Land. There's a witness named Travis Bush who took the stand, and he spoke to Bionca Ellis right after. Let's listen to what he said.
I said, do you know you stabbed that kid?
And what were your observations of her at that time? Did she look at you?
Yes.
Did she respond to you?
Yes.
What did she say to you?
With the shrug and mouthing so.
Okay, Dr. Carroll, what do you think of that?
Oh, dear. Well, clearly she understood him. She answered him. Obviously, that's very cold and very, I don't want to say psychopathic, but it could be, her defense could argue, well, yes, you see, she didn't really know what she was doing. She had this strange reaction to his asking her that. A normal person would feel more empathetic. You know, that's why when you have a case like this, you know, I've done not guilty by reason of insanity cases, and you have to do such a thorough examination of the person and such a thorough examination of the history to get all these little pieces to put them together.
Yes, yes. I think that's exactly why this makes it such a fascinating trial. We just don't know what was going on here, sadly, that took the life of Julian Wood. We'll leave it there for now. Dr. Carol Lieberman, thank you so much for coming on the program. Michael J. Brown, you're coming with us. Friends at home, do the same, please. Go get some more coffee. Here's what's next on Opening Statements.
We are literally talking about people fighting over a parking space, or a dispute about where people are parking, and it resulted in someone receiving just incredibly significant injuries.
So who's liable? We're talking about former NFL star Mark Sanchez and that stabbing attack. Plus, we're remembering 2-year-old Parker Schultz, her father, expected to go on trial in just a few weeks from now. Little Parker was killed in a hot car. Will her dad be found responsible?
My 2 best friends were just murdered.
Join me for a Court TV true crime series where we take you from the crime scene to the courtroom.
Donna Adelson hates every piece of grass that Dan Marcel ever walked on.
It's something that'll haunt all of us forever.
It always seemed like he was covering or deceiving.
This was a whole different level.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. New episodes Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
These are...
Well, I want to be clear about this. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care where you live. If you come into our city, commit violence, we will use all the tools at our disposal to hold you accountable.
We've got some brand new details emerging surrounding sports broadcaster Mark Sanchez after he was stabbed multiple times over the weekend. Surveillance footage obtained by the New York Post shows New York Post sports division of the paper shows Mark Sanchez bloodied, leaving the scene of this physical altercation that we now know occurred with a 69-year-old truck driver. According to the affidavit, here's what we know about the incident. It says in part, quote, Mr. Sanchez is seen running after Perry Toll, that's the truck driver. And the video shows Mr. Sanchez grabbing and throwing Toll towards the wall of the Westin. It appears that the 2 men are now fighting between the large metal green dumpster and the truck. Mr. Sanchez is then seen throwing Toll to the ground on the west side of the alley just as the car passes. Toll stands up from the ground, and Mr. Sanchez is standing there for a brief moment before turning and running. Now, Sanchez was in Indianapolis to call the Colts Las Vegas Raiders game on Sunday, but was forced off the broadcast due to the stabbing incident. The former quarterback is now facing a felony battery charge, along with several other misdemeanor charges. In a press conference earlier this week, here's what Marion County Prosecutor Ryan Myers had to say about the state's self-defense laws.
Well, certainly Indiana has some of the most robust self-defense laws in the nation, and that's always going to be part of the equation when you evaluate cases like this and trying to determine exactly what took place. And it will certainly be at the center of this particular trial as well when we have conversations about were people acting reasonably or not. And in Indiana, you have no duty to retreat. And so those are all things that you need to consider in terms of when you make that initial charging decision. Those facts have been evaluated, and certainly the self-defense law is going to be an issue that will be raised at trial.
I have to tell you, Ryan Mears, a really sharp prosecutor. If he looks familiar, he should. He's been on this show before. It was regarding a child abuse case. Now, lawyers representing Perry Toll also have already filed a civil lawsuit against Mark Sanchez and against his employer, Fox. They filed this in Indiana State Court on Monday. So let's talk about who has liability here. Let's bring in our Legal Eagles attorneys, Michael J. Brown and John Phillips. Good morning to you both. John, let me start with you. Who has liability here and why, please?
I hate what happened. I love the case. This is kind of something that's right up my alley. It's got sports, it's got courts, it's got everything. You know, Mark Sanchez isn't one of these guys that's known for being a bad guy off the field. He's known for a butt fumble. That's basically his thing. And so it was a little surprising when he came out. But, you know, essentially, he seems, according to the reports, intoxicated to Perry Toll. Perry's just there to do his job. He's the guy that trades out the oil for restaurants. And Mark has some issue with him being there at that time. And, you know, 39-year-old professional athlete, former professional athlete, Mark, goes after 69-year-old hearing aid, you know, equipped, or I think you didn't have him in, you know, Perry Toll. And the photos that have been released of Perry are pretty significant, you know, as to his injuries. And it's different scenes of attack. And all of that rolls into what the prosecutor said. You can't initiate a confrontation with violence and then, you know, get away with it. And so, yeah, Mark got maced and Mark got stabbed, but he was the aggressor, and Perry Toll had every right to stand his ground, has civil and criminal, you know, Mark Sanchez has civil and criminal liability.
John, great analysis. Thank you much. Michael J. Brown, I want to ask you the same question. Where do you see the liability lying here throughout this case?
I agree, Julie. It's never easy being a Jet fan. It's even harder now. So what we have here is, as John indicated, a individual, Mark Sanchez, who's much younger, much stronger, much more agile. He is a professional athlete or former professional athlete, and you're dealing with somebody who's probably almost twice his age. And Sanchez is the aggressor. Now, you have to remember that you have to use the same level of force, and that's going to be the big issue for Sanchez, or at least his defense. But what's going to have happened here is Sanchez, because of his size, his age, his strength, this fella felt that he absolutely was in serious physical injury or death type of situation. He pulled out apparently his pepper spray, and that didn't suffice. And then he pulled out a knife, and then Sanchez went back at him. So I think Sanchez has a heavy road to haul here, and I think he's in some serious trouble.
You're exactly right. Excellent insight, Michael. Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up those details about Mr. Toll, Mr. Perry Toll, the alleged victim in all this here. We want to look at things from his perspective now and really dig into some of the facts that you just cited there, Michael. So we understand that, according to the affidavit, he walked back around to the driver's side of his car, tried to get his cell phone. He says that Mr. Sanchez shoved him backward. At this point, things are escalating here, according to him. And he said he felt he was in physical danger. He said at that point, he reached into his pocket, took out his pepper spray, sprayed Sanchez in the face. And he said it appeared to have an effect on him for a moment, but then when he saw him wipe his face and again keep coming toward him, that's when he thought, this guy is trying to kill me. That's what he told police. So he said at that point, he pulled out his knife. And then he said when Sanchez came at him, he went at Sanchez and stabbed him 2 or 3 times, he recalls, with that knife. He said when he was on the ground, he could only see Mr. Sanchez's feet coming toward him, but nonetheless, he felt that it was a life or death situation. I want to talk about this from his perspective and what he felt and the fear he was in. And Michael, you did this a little bit when you gave us the analysis, but give us more, please. That was so good. So as you look at this kind of play-by-play, I'm not intending to make a pun here or anything. When you look at this, so step 1, he tries by getting away to get the cell phone, right? So there's a little bit of a retreat. That doesn't work. There's the pepper spray. That doesn't work. Then he goes to the deadly force. Actions proper here in your view by him?
I think so. So, you know, again, he's not the defendant. He's the alleged victim. But what Sanchez is going to argue is, hey, I did what I had to do to defend myself against this guy. But go back to initial aggressor, and you go back to the circumstances, which is much older. He's trying to deflect the situation, and even pulling out the pepper spray. That's not deadly physical force. That's pepper spray can simply, it causes you to choke and maybe blind you temporarily. He's doing everything he can to get Sanchez away from him. And then I think is what's been said is that he then pulls out a knife after Sanchez attacks him. It was escalated. It started, it escalated, and really they're going to put the blame on Sanchez for what he did. And he really carried it one step too far.
Mm-hmm. John, let me ask you, please, civilly, who else should be worried here? Because we were thinking, we know that Fox Sports has been sued. They've declined to comment on the lawsuit. But we're wondering, might there be any liability at this hotel where this incident happened, or whomever owns that parking lot? I'm just curious who may else be facing something.
Right. Great question. There was a gut reaction when this happened to kind of cast it off as some sort of vagrancy issue, and that's not the case. You had a professional athlete that was on the clock, well, off the clock for Fox Sports, who just escalated this thing. And certainly Mark Sanchez carries the very large majority of the liability. I don't really see Fox Sports as liable here. But you add the pocket in, you as plaintiffs' lawyers, we put them in, and then they let the judge take them out, And as far as the hotel, at the hour this was, they could have sued the hotel for a duty to, keep the place reasonably secure. But that would take away, some of that pie, if you think about it, from Mark Sanchez. And they at least right now want to go after Mark Sanchez. They have a statute of limitations that's going to give them time to amend. But you want to win in criminal court, civil court, and the court of public opinion. And so they filed very quickly to get, Mark Sanchez under the microscope.
John Phillips, that's such a great quote. You want to win in criminal court, civil court, and the court of public opinion. Yeah, that's the trifecta right there. Great talk with you, gentlemen. We'll leave it here, and we'll report any more details as we have them with this case involving Mark Sanchez. Let's hit a break now. When we come back, here's what's coming up for you on Opening Statements.
I can't believe this. This can't be happening.
We're looking ahead to the trial of the father accused in the hot car death of his little 2-year-old daughter, Parker. And chilling case in Texas that's developing this morning. A mother allegedly shoots her 4 kids, killing 2 of them. We're wondering what led up to this disturbing incident. Welcome back. This morning, we're being a voice for victims, remembering 2-year-old Parker Schultz. Little Parker died after being left for dead in a hot car for over 3 hours, allegedly by her own father. She was strapped into her car seat and left in sweltering temperatures. Authorities say that Christopher Schultz was drinking, playing video games, and watching pornography while his daughter died. Now, keep in mind that authorities say that little Parker was in that car for almost 3.5 hours. So what did Dad tell the police? Take a look.
How long was she sleeping in the car out there?
I want to say it was no more than 30, 45 minutes. And I don't think her air was off that entire time. I think there was a time in between. I checked on her last. It was still running. She was still sleeping. And then when I went back out, the car was off.
Now, we've already learned that Mr. Schultz has a history of complaints with an older daughter of his. The complaints were ruled unsubstantiated, but that older child, we know, did move into the care of her birth mother. What's more, Mr. Schultz has turned down a plea for second-degree murder. in this case. So he is heading to trial on the charge of first-degree murder, set to go later on this month. Let's talk about this. I know my next guest has a lot to say about this case. He's been following it since its inception. He's the former Georgia Director of the Department of Family and Children Services, Attorney Tom Rawlings. Tom, good morning to you. Your thoughts on this man advancing to trial after turning down that plea deal on these facts?
Well, good morning, Julie. You know, I don't know if it's hubris or just pride or stupidity, but given the circumstances of this case, I think it's fairly egregious. As we've discussed before, this is not one of those situations where somebody just forgot the child was in the car. He knew she was out there. He knew sweltering heat. He's in there apparently drinking, using drugs, playing video games for hours. This is just absolutely criminal parenting, and especially given his history with his older child, maybe he thought he could get away with it because Child Protective Services really didn't do anything with the first child. Maybe he just, you know, or maybe he's just doesn't care. But certainly I see there's a great possibility he's going to be doing a significant amount of prison time for this.
Definitely. Tom, let's dig into some of those prior complaints that were ruled unsubstantiated, but nonetheless, these complaints were made. Records we're getting from Arizona's Department of Child Safety show a history of abuse that dates back 11 years involving an older daughter who is not related to Schultz's current wife. These reports range from 2014 to 2020. They show accusations that he slapped the daughter, left bruises on the daughter's body, and failed to help his daughter manage her diabetes. Again, the complaints ruled unsubstantiated, but we know the daughter went back to the care of her birth mother. So, Tom, what does that move tell you?
Well, that tells me that, number one, there are a lot of systems that failed here. If you think about it, you know, repeat allegations, and there were significant allegations of mistreatment against the older daughter. There was no accountability. Schultz had no accountability for what happened. You have to think that that may have contributed to what happened here, because no one took corrective action against him to say, you know, you really need to grow up. You need to learn how to become a responsible adult. You need to learn how to become a responsible parent. Instead, what we saw was Arizona DCS just got involved several times and said, oh, nothing to see here, go on about your business. But, you know, Julie, I think they may have told you I'm actually calling in from an international child protection conference in Lithuania right now. Wow. And unfortunately, we see the same pattern in many places around the world. There are allegations made, there's an investigation, there's no accountability, and no protection of the child.
Oh, wow. Tom, I actually didn't know that. That is so impressive. We know you care so much about children, our Cordy family. We love you for that, and we thank you for all that you do to advocate for kids. I want to show you a clip, Tom. I know that you've seen this as we've talked about this case a while back, but I think this is one of those stunning moments that's really going to mean something for the jury when Chris Schultes is captured on body camera footage talking to police, and he says why he left his daughter in the car.
She was sleeping in the car, and I had the car on, but it has a sensor where every 30 minutes or so it'll turn off if you haven't moved. I swore she was in the house playing with her sisters like she always does.
So he leaves her in there because she's sleeping, Tom. Oh my, your thoughts, please.
Okay. He knows she's there. If I recall correctly, this was in June or July in Arizona, I think. It was hot. Anybody who has lived in a hot climate, I live in Georgia, and, you know, it gets hot as heck in the summer. And you know that if you leave a pet or a child in a car, for any length of time during the summer, it's going to become dangerously hot in that car. And it just shows a complete lack of care for the child. And any reasonable person would know that that is just an incredibly dangerous, foolish, and quite frankly, murderous thing to do.
Tom, I love your insight and analysis. It's outstanding. Going back to a point you made, as I'm sitting here thinking about this, it really stuck with me how you said, you know, he has these prior complaints, nothing happens to him, and so he just goes on marching forward. You know, with parenting, unfortunately, there aren't, maybe there are parenting schools, you would know, I don't know, you know, I'm not a parent, but, you know, someone like him, you know, he's not, obviously, he's deficient somewhere. There's something going on that's wrong. You know, if you get all these complaints made and there's nothing, like you said, that's teaching him the right way to move forward, and then here we have this innocent little, beautiful, healthy baby girl, and his mind's on the video games, the porn, the alcohol, whatever he was doing that afternoon. It's just, who do you think is to blame for that? Do you think that the Department of Family Services there has any responsibility in not seeing that he, you know, had some type of monitoring or some type of enforcement or corrective action?
Yeah, there's a couple things to think about. Number one, given the prior allegations, you know, there should have been some kind of intervention. Now, look, you know, you can't, as they say, you can't fix stupid, okay? But if you are reliably accused of multiple cases in which you've neglected or hurt, even accidentally, a child, the state needs to step in and say, look, we need to see you make some sort of improvement. We need to see you make some sort of changes in your life. And it may not have applied to this case. It's hard to say from the situation. But in other situations I've seen, you'll have a case where a parent abused one child, and then when another child is born to that parent, it flags the case for Child Protective Services so they can at least step in and monitor the situation, see whether or not the parent is safe to parent that child.
Right,
You know,
right. Something like that could be done. Yes, just some kind of something, monitoring something, put them on notice. Yeah. Go ahead, you look like you're about to say something. Yeah, go ahead quickly.
Yeah, well, Julian, you do this you see this all the time, you know, and in fact, it's in the news a lot lately. People commit a horrible crime, and then somebody says, well, they were arrested 6 times before that, and nothing happened to them.
Yep.
And it's the same situation in the Child Protective Service field. You've got to hold people accountable in some way.
Amen.
Or else they'll continue to do what they do.
Amen. Tom Rawlings, awesome insight as always. Safe travels back home from Lithuania. We thank you kindly for making time for this segment. And as we go to break, let's remember beautiful Parker Schultz. She was 2 years old at the time of her death. Her family said she always had a smile on her face and a joyful spirit. She was taken way too soon.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
A wife accused of murdering her prominent attorney husband, and the defense involves blaming her own sons?
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
Yesterday, Brazoria County deputies responded to an unthinkable, unimaginable tragedy. This event has shaken our community, and we are all feeling the loss.
Now to a chilling story out of Texas as a mother is accused of shooting 4 of her own children, killing 2 of them. This morning we're wondering why. Onita Romulus allegedly shot her children at this gas station in Angleton, Texas, which is just about 45 minutes south of Houston. Romulus is facing 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. She's being held on $14 million bond. Here's what law enforcement said about the victims, and this video comes to us from Houston TV station KRIV.
All 4 children have sustained gunshot wounds. Sadly, a 13-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl did not survive. We are thankful to report that an 8-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl are now in stable condition.
Let's bring back our legal eagles for more analysis. Michael J. Brown, John Phillips. What a dreadful case. Ooh, John, would you start us off? Your thoughts, please?
Let me get a composure for a second. You know, as a father of a 13, 11, and 8-year-old boy, I say that very often. You know, I'm a father first, and you know, a lawyer second, and there's just no words on a case like this. Like, why? You know, that's where you started. You've got 2 children shot and killed, and 2 children shot, and the trauma of those children, and particularly, you know, if allegations are true that they were shot by their mother. How do you go on from that? You know, their life is effectively altered forever, and you just keep asking, you know, why? What happened here?
Exactly. It's unspeakable. It really is. Michael, your initial reaction as you heard this awful news break?
Yeah, Julie, it's horrible. I mean, you're dealing with a very senseless situation, and the parent's supposed to be the one that protects the child, and it's supposed to always be concerned about their well-being. You know, but as an attorney, we're always trained to think, hey, why would this have happened? Is there a defense? What could the possible explanation be? And the only thing that comes to my mind is either this insanity type of situation or an extreme emotional disturbance situation, which triggered this event. Obviously, it could be pure evil, and this mother wanted to eliminate her children, which is the worst of the worst. But legally speaking, we try to seek possible explanations, and those are the 2 that came to my mind.
Yes, excellent point, Michael. I have something for you. This document was dug up by a TV station KPRC, so I want to credit them for this. Click to Houston.com. Drawing your attention to that last paragraph on your screen. Investigators said that this woman told them initially that instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them. When the investigator said, what are you talking about? She said, kill them all. When asked again why she called 911, she said she did not call 911, but instead she called the devil. Michael, right there, what you were just talking about, perhaps an explanation, perhaps we have a sanity issue.
Yeah, it could, Julie, and hopefully for both sides that interview is recorded, because, listen, it could show if they're feigning it and trying to act, and on the other side of the coin, it could show that it's a literal and sincere and real mental disease or defect. So that's important, and that's going to go a long way towards the prosecution of the case, and just the same towards the defense of the case.
Yes, Michael. And John, as we know, nothing makes this better. Nothing makes this okay. Nothing makes this palatable. This is just disturbing, disgusting, heartbreaking on every level. If this woman was hallucinating or thinking she's seeing the devil or doing something, you know, that represents there was a mental health issue at play, does this perhaps soften this awful blow to everyone who loved those kids so much?
Okay, that was the end of the question. To everyone that loved those kids, I don't think that would soften any blow, right? To the jurisprudence, if she has a bona fide insanity defense and mental disease and defect, you know, that might soften it to a jury, right? But you know, most of us live this life, and I've seen Michael's very son, you know, appear on this broadcast, and all of us are grieving for these children.
Yeah, we sure are. Well said. We've got to leave it there. Thank you both for another great episode. Michael and John, we'll see you soon.